I have another question for you.
Okay.
Most of the time that I knew Andrea for the first few years, she was either married or in a relationship. So it's really been exciting for me to see like this goddess in the dating world.
Oh.
Yeah. What I know for me, what I've looked for in a man has changed so much drastically, even in the last couple of years. What do you look for in a man?
Well, one of the things I started saying recently, and this is something that, would get me called arrogant or conceited or any of the things, and obviously I don't give a shit. But I see myself as, if I see myself as a goddess, then I want a god. I don't want a man. I want to be with my divine masculine counterpart. And I want someone that is on the path of embodying all of the very same things that I'm embodying now. So it's that really deep-rooted self-love. It's reverence for the creator, the feminine, reverence for the masculine as well. But again, the feminine is
top tier.
90% of our universe is feminine energy. It's what is it? Proton energy, which is it protons are the negatively charged energy?
I have no idea.
Yeah, electrons.
No, I think it's
protons are negative, right?
No, protons.
I think protons are positive, and then neutrons.
Yeah, and because protons P positive. That's how I used to
really.
remember it.
I think so.
Should we Google it?
Let's Google it.
Let's Google it. Let's Google it.
I want to make sure I get it right. But basically, like negative energy is feminine energy. And that's like the vast majority of the universe is made up of negative or feminine energy. And so that's why, like, I won't say superior, but
I kind of am.
What else am I going to say?
What other word can we use?
Okay.
Proton positive.
So protons are positive.
Proton positive, yeah, because of the
Thank
P.
you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Google.
Thank you.
Thanks, Google.
DuckDuckGo. Yeah, because
I don't want to be tracked.
Not censored and tracking. Yeah.
I got my back. You got my back.
Yes. But now I forgot what I was saying.
About like what you're looking for in a man.
Yeah. Yes. The reverence for the divine feminine, the reverence for women who really understands what we are, the embodiment of someone who has the discipline, someone who takes really great care of his body, someone who is compassionate and empathetic, who is nurturing, and that's what I mean when I say has reverence for the divine feminine, because he recognizes that principle within himself. And he doesn't reject that, because rejecting the divine feminine is rejecting yourself. You're rejecting your creator. You came out of a womb. You came out of the feminine. And so to reject that is to reject yourself. It's a form of self-hatred. And I don't want to be with someone who hates themselves, because if you don't love me, you don't love yourself.
Yeah.
And I love me. And so, and I love you. I love you as the embodiment of the divine masculine principle, because you are the driving force in my life. Like the masculine is the person, what's that phrase? The feminine speaks the law, the masculine carries out the law.
The doers.
Yes.
You say, yeah.
They're the doers.
Yeah, they're the doers.
They're the doers, they're the builders. The feminine is the creator, the masculine is the builder. So I tell you what it is that I'm creating, and then you build it for me.
Which is,
I like that.
That is absolutely so powerful.
That's why we're not going to take anything away. It's another thing. I was in a discussion with a guy, and I said something about how powerful women were and how we were creators. And he's like, excuse me, men are creators. Like, you can't do it without, and all this stuff. And I was like, why does me saying that I'm powerful and then I'm a creator, what does that take away from you? And I think that's where the disconnect from the feminine comes, when men see us kind of empower ourselves. I love being around men. And, like my best friend that was on our podcast the other day, one of my best friends, whose husband, we make fun of him because he always wants to be around feminine. He's always, he feels more powerful around us instead of feeling intimidated by us. And those are the kind of men that I feel I've been manifesting.
He's a delight.
He's a delight. He's so, because he's not afraid of his and that makes him so powerful. Yeah. And that really
does, yes.
Does. And all of his wives' friends, myself included, are very powerful because he feels comfortable around that. I find his masculinity so powerful.
Yep. Well, because like you're the person you were just talking about who got really offended when you called yourself a creator, what he doesn't seem to understand is that it's the divine within him that is the creator.
Exactly.
That's the
and I think as
and is the creator within you.
Right.
Right. And as male, I think that they're like they are trained to think that their strength is through money or through being strong or through how powerful they are in an environment. You know, like they're trained to think differently when they don't realize that their true strength comes from vulnerability and being emotional and being open and, you know, admitting to fault or being honest and looking, you know, in a different way. Yeah. So I feel like that's like it's like reverse, you know, like they don't understand that their power comes from being divine feminine.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what Gabby was saying before when she was saying that she kind of feels sorry for them and she feels like the behavior actually, yes, it hurts us. You know, patriarchy hurts women, but it absolutely is destroying men. And that was something I had to realize because I went through a very angry phase. Like an angry feminist phase where I was just like, down with the patriarchy, men are trash, they're evil, they're destroying us. You know, I was just like so angry. I felt trapped. I was like depressed. I was just like, I was a mess. And now what I understand is that, you know, like she said, I have so much more compassion and empathy because patriarchy really disconnects them from the divine. It connects them from their own godhood. And it perverts it. So they get all of these, you know, perceived benefits, which is like sexual access to women, 24 access to porn, prostitution, basically all of the things that are used to exploit women that they feel like they benefit from. But really, the more they lean into those distortions of the divine principle, the more they become disconnected and disembodied. And it's unfortunate because on the surface level, they think that they're gaining things, but they're really losing themselves. And that's really why so many men, no matter how much money they make, they're so miserable. They're miserable. And they're still, like I said before, no matter what they attain, they're always going to pursue a woman. Like it's very rare that you find a man who is completely comfortable on his own. And the men that are really comfortable being on their own and can go long extended periods of time without female contact and especially without sex are men that are more in tune with their feminine principle. Because the men that are disconnected from that, like you said, Gabby, are always seeking that out and really trying to strangle it out, sometimes literally strangling it out of women because they don't have it within themselves.
They're looking for it inside of themselves, but they want an idealized specific version that they've told that they should want of the feminine, that if we don't embody that, because we're not that, we're better. But if we don't fill in that exact and that simulation changes by the day, right? Like it's the comparison look, it's the this look. No, just kidding. Now you want big fat lips. No, just kidding. Now you want a big ass. It's never ending, right? And so it's exhausting for us, but it's exhausting for them too because they're not connected to what they truly want. And I generalize, but a lot of men.
I'm fine generalizing. If it doesn't apply, then let it fly. But the fact that people get so caught up on generalizations is so annoying, and it really, I think, like. It takes away from your ability to have like a coherent conversation. We're speaking generally. If it doesn't, like Black women get generalized all the time. Like I don't fit a lot of the things that are said about Black women, just as I'm sure you don't fit a lot of the things that are said about Latina, but I'm still Black. I can still have the conversation about it. So generalize.
Yes, I love that.
Don't stop doing that. What? I get so annoyed with like, you're just generalizing men. Not all men do that. Like, okay, then I'm not talking about you, am I?
Yeah.
But I'm still
then they're taking it personal.
General thing in society that does exist because I've experienced it.
Which I'm glad that you brought that up with the self-love thing.
Yeah.
Because I tend to say this a lot. I'll say something and I'll say, of course, I could be wrong. I could just be projecting. I almost everything I say, I add that caveat.
Yeah, you like qualify everything.
And you're with us. And she said, you can say something and let it just be the truth. You can make a statement and just let it be the truth.
She's so wise.
So wise.
She's 20. Like my niece is 20. And
she's 20.
She's like the best.
I love that.
The best. And she said that comment and it literally was like, I can't do something and just let it lie. But it was such a lack of self-love because it was almost like I gaslight myself that if I feel like something is true, oh, but it might not be. So actually I take it back. And it's that constant like gaslighting yourself is another form of lack of self-love.
Well, I had a situation where, you know, it was someone very close to me, you know, because when I speak with conviction because I actually believe what I say. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right, but I'm going to stand 10 toes down on what it is that I'm expressing. And she said to me, she was like, but you always say things with so much conviction. And she said it with like this disdain in her voice. And I said to her, I was like, so you're angry because I believe what I'm saying? And she was just kind of like, then the cognitive dissonance hit. And then, you know, you don't really know how to respond to that. But it was just so interesting to me that someone would get angry at me because I actually have conviction with what I say. And I think it's because women are conditioned to always have caveats and to qualify, or like, well, I'm not talking about everything, or I don't necessarily mean it this way. I don't mean to be condescending, or da-da-da-da-da-da. It's like, just say it and let it be what it's going to be. And if somebody has a problem with it, fuck them. Let them have a problem with it. That belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you. So stop censoring yourself and just stand in the truth of what it is that you want to express, because it has value. Even if it's not right, it still has value.
That's self-love.
Yes. And that's I was going to say that's self-love. That's just appreciating yourself and standing in your own and being like, this is who I am. This is what I believe. And if you like it, you do. And if you don't, bye.
You know, we found it in relationships. Like I've walked away from relationships where I've had to de-gaslight myself of all the things that I thought I was doing wrong because I either projected that onto myself or I let that person make me feel that way. Right. So question for you as well. What books do you like for someone, you know, my little cousins, I talk so much about you. They really love you.
Oh my God. I love you. I love them too.
They love you. And they're like, okay, but how do we get like an Andrea in like physical form? Like, does she have a book? Can I read a book? Like what can I ingest? Because I think a lot of women are hungry for it and they just don't know where to go for this information.
It's so hard because so much of what I know, like I definitely have some books, but most of what I know is downloaded. It's intuitive. It comes from just listening to other women, listening to older women. I think that society does a really good job of disconnecting young women from older women and the wisdom that they have. And that's one of the, like you were talking about, Vanessa, about how, you know, you're turning 30, which every time I hear a woman talk about they're going into their 30s, I'm like, because the 30s is when women finally start to like get it. And I can only imagine what the 40s and 50s are going to be like. I mean, like every woman I know that's in her 40s is like, oh, fuck the 30s. It's all about the 40s. It's like, and it just gets better and better and better for us because we get so much more wisdom and knowledge. And there's a reason why we're older women and younger women are pitted against each other. And are taught to not trust, or younger women are taught not to trust older women. We're called, like even me, like I'm 34 years old and you have 20-year-olds who won't listen to a word I say because they think I'm over the hill. But then there are other 20-year-olds like my niece who really comes to me because she looks at me and she sees that I've created a life for myself that she would like to, you know, she doesn't want to live my life, but she's seen the way that I've built a beautiful life for myself. And so she wants to know what I've done to get there. And so listening to the women that are older than you and learning from their mistakes, even if what they're saying to you is BS, if you just have the discernment to look at what it is they're doing that isn't working and learn from that, that's valuable. Like that's what I did when I was a teen. I was looking at, you know, members of my family. I was looking at some of the things that my mom went through, some of the mistakes that my mom made, and decided, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something different. And those things are super, super valuable. I would recommend, let me see, I'm like looking at my bookshelf. There's a really great, do you mind if I grab?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, grab a couple.
Because also the younger generations, babies, children are coming to teach the older generations. And I've noticed a lot of the women that I've idolized, I still idolize in a way, but I've noticed a lot more of their wounds that they haven't worked through because I, as a brand new generation, don't have as much stigma towards self-love, towards therapy. They have that as like, you know,
Yeah.
even women have that as a weakness.
It's okay to cherry pick.
Right.
Like, it's okay to cherry pick. You take what you know, chew the meat and spit out the bones, as they say. I'm vegan, so I don't eat meat, but you know what I'm saying. But you get it. You know, you take what's necessary and you let the rest go. Whatever doesn't serve you, you don't carry that with you. And oftentimes we take the things that don't serve us because that's what's modeled to us, rather than having the discernment and the courage to do something different. And that's really what sets a lot of women like yourself apart, is that you say, like you said, like you're an amazing woman and you have all of these beautiful things that you've done, but there's also, you're dealing with all of these, you know, societal limitations that I don't have to deal with. Therefore, I get to choose differently than you did. And a lot of young women don't feel like they have even the option to choose differently. And so I think, like, another, to answer the question about like, what would I tell your cousins, is that you have the power and the option to choose whatever you want to choose. You don't have to do what anyone else around you is doing. You know, you follow your own path, and trust your intuition and your inner guide. And if you don't feel like you have a strong intuition, then you ask yourself, what are the ways that I can deepen my self-love? And we've already talked about so many practices that you can do to deepen that self-love, but it really is just trusting that you know what's best for you, and that you don't have to model something that doesn't feel right, even if it's what everybody else around you is doing.
Right.
I had a great conversation with that yesterday. We were talking about culture. You know, culture is very often a prison, you know, and I'm from Black culture. You guys are from Latin culture. We know how powerful those cultures are, and how if you're not adhering to certain, you know, rules of that culture, then you're not being a good Latina, or you're acting like a white girl, or, you know, whatever things that people say to try to keep you in line. And the root word of culture is cult.
Oh my God, so right.
It's cult. And people don't really realize that, but it's really just a set of rules and expectations that you're supposed to follow to keep a traditional way of life. But it's like, you're still an individual. You weren't born just into a culture. You're born as an individual with your own path and your own purpose. And so maybe what you're choosing something that doesn't align with your culture necessarily. And that's okay. That's okay. It's okay to choose something different, even if you're rejecting a part of your culture. And, you know, we often feel beholden or responsible to like continue these traditions, but that may not necessarily be serving what's best for you. And so that's something that we really should think about more, because women are the ones that are pressured the most to uphold culture, because again, we're the creators, and society flips and perverts our creative powers to maintain these ideals in society.
Right. And we also want to belong. So we want to create the culture because we want to belong to a collective.
Yeah.
Women want to belong. We want to, you know, and that's why sometimes we're in packs, which is another distortion of like how women have turned against each other, because we actually want to be together and travel in packs, but we want to belong. But the most important thing, and this is where self-love comes in, is belonging to yourself first before you belong to that culture, to that collective. So if something about that culture, that collective, that Latin culture, that Black culture is compromising that belonging to yourself, that's when you step aside. That's when you move. It doesn't serve you. But in order to get there, there has to be that connection to yourself. So whether it's through a yoni egg, whether it's through meditation, just freaking connect to yourself.
Yes.
You know, let's see those books.
Okay, so it was hard to pick three. I had to do it very quickly, but this is the first one. So this is by Queen Afua. It's called Sacred Woman.
Okay.
And this book is basically like, I'll just read some of the table of contents from you, or for you. So basically what it is it's just a bunch of different practices. Like, it talks about the sacred womb, the spirit of the womb, the care of the womb, commitment for all women who enter the 9 gateways. And it breaks down all of the gateways for, you know, empowering yourself through the womb. So it's words, food, movement, beauty, space, healing, relationships, sacred union, which is like connecting with your divine counterpart, sex. It has all types of exercises and rituals. It talks about the female body. It talks about the power of the womb. It really just breaks down like rules for the divine home, you know, healing house requirements. And it's just like a little like a little mantra you can say. This is a healing place. This is a healing house. You are here to heal. No opposite gender overnight guests in the healing house. No oven on in the healing house during the summer months. No profanity in the healing house. It impedes all of us from healing. No playing loud, destructive music in the healing house. No one has to deal with stress. Healing is the dealing. So it's just like all of these like old, like sacred rituals and practices to keep you connected to yourself and in your divine feminine. This book, I haven't finished it yet. It's, as you can see, it's a monster. It's a Bible for sure. It's called The Great Cosmic Mother. And I love this book so much. And I've read other books like it. There's another one I read called When God Was a Woman. And it was what I touched on earlier when I talked about how, you know, the entire planet used to be female. And a lot of women don't know that, like the Y.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Where's that? Like, where did that come from? I'm curious. Like, so, when you said that, I was like, really?
Yeah. I mean, and this is, you can actually, this is scientific. You can actually like look this up, but the Y chromosome is, now this, I don't mean to
take us there, Andrea. Take us there.
We're about to go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. So the Y chromosome is not its own separate entity. The Y chromosome is actually a degraded X chromosome. It is an X chromosome that is missing a significant amount of genetic material. It's essentially a mutated X chromosome. And that's what males are. Males are mutated females. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to men. This is just, nature doesn't care about your feelings. Mm-hmm. You know, saying like, this is Mother Nature. It's a degraded X chromosome. That's why women have we contain the most genetic material. And even when you look at reproduction, like a lot of men, they refer to the sperm as the seed, which is bullshit. Bullshit. Sperm is not the seed. At best, sperm is the fertilizer. You look at
the water.
The egg is the seed.
Mm-hmm.
Even referring to it as an egg is a distortion. That's a mental distortion to change your perception of your own body and your own generative power as a woman. Because if you look at the definition of a seed, ask yourself if that sounds more like an egg, the ovum, or if it sounds more like the sperm. Because the seed is the organism that contains all of the building blocks of life.
Right.
And the sperm contains a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of mitochondrial DNA, whereas the woman possesses the vast majority of mitochondrial DNA. Even the blood that runs through a baby's body is literally created by the mother. Like they say blood, like, you know, blood, like in patriarchy, they call the bloodline the father, is the creator of the bloodline.
Like they pass down their name.
It's not true. It's the mother. And that's why prior to patriarchy, all societies were matrilineal and matrifocal, because they understood that it was the mother that was the main creator and who provided the majority of the genetic material for the baby. Like that's what your menstrual blood is. Like your menstrual blood is new blood that you are literally creating in order to sustain the life of a child. And when you're not impregnated, you shed that blood and that lining. So all of the blood that runs through your veins was given to you by your mother, not your father. Bloodlines are through the mother. And again, that's why patriarchy distorts. Like they put so much pressure on women, but they do it in a way that disempowers us because they understand that we are the main vessel of creation. And so they usurp that power and put their fist on it to maintain control and male dominance. And so the Great Cosmic Mother, it talks about, and this is all backed up by archaeological evidence, and it talks about the history of creation. It talks about the worship of the woman as the goddess, how all of the original artifacts were of the Divine Mother. Remember when I read you guys that excerpt when we did the ceremony? Do you mind if I read it? Do we have time?
Go ahead.
I want to hear it. Yeah, we have a little bit of time.
This book is massive.
My mind is blown, by the way, right now. Like from what you just said, the 5 minutes, I was like,
yes.
Both minds. It's insane.
And I say that to women and they're just kind of like, they really just gloss over it because it's just something that we're never told. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Cause I heard you say it before and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I literally in my head, I was like, I'm about to Google that when I'm off of this. And then you said it again. I was like, I'm going to ask her because I've never heard that before.
You really did. The Y chromosome did not come into existence. I think it was, I want to say 200,000 years after after the
Wow.
like the first like discovery of like female civilization. Like the
Mhm.
entire planet used to be female, and women used to reproduce through parthenogenesis. Like the book of Genesis and the Bible, again, it's a perversion of
Ah,
the woman coming from the rib of
the
Adam.
rib.
It's a reversal of what actually happened. Women used to birth through parthenogenesis, or like what the Bible refers to as like the virgin birth, the immaculate conception, because we used to contain all of those genetic elements within the body. And then we essentially separated ourselves by creating the man so that we
Mm.
could have that divine union.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
So,
think
Wow.
it's hard because also history is male. Like
mhm.
history is written by men, the
His
history that we
story,
learn.
his story.
Ah, girl.
There's
Literally.
there's so much that women just don't know, but all of this information is becoming to it's getting unearthed. And
Yeah.
that's
It's
what
coming to light.
and that's part of what the rise of the divine feminine is. When people talk about the rise of the divine feminine, it's women coming into consciousness of, you know, their true divine power. Maybe not, they may not consciously understand, but subconsciously there's an awakening that's happening all across the planet, and more information is coming out where women are learning the truth about what has really happened. And I mean,
Mhm.
we really do need a whole separate episode to even
We will.
talk about patriarchy. But
Right.
this is the paragraph that I read to Gabby and a couple of other friends during our mushroom
track.
ceremony. Okay, let me see if I haven't read out loud in a while. Okay. When we say that women created most of early human culture, we are not trying to sound radical. The evidence is there, quite tangible. When we realize how many basic life industries were the inventions of women: cooking, food processing and storage, ceramics, weaving, textiles and design, tanning and dyeing, everything related to fire, e.g., chemistry and metallurgy, the medicinal arts, language itself, and the first scripts and glyphs, grain domestication, animal domestication, religious imagery and ritual, domestic and sacred architecture, the first calendars and the origins of astronomy, and on, then we don't need to project our imaginations far back into the past to confirm these inventions. They are still around us today. They constitute our world. Stolen and mechanized by several thousand years of patriarchal exploitation, most of these inventions have been turned into grossly alienated and profiteering mass market industries. We do have to use our imaginations to remember that all were once warm, personal, and lovingly tended arts and crafts originated and sustained by early communities of women.
And what I love about one of the things that stood out to me was how I've rediscovered astrology, because astrology
Mm.
is so like, I mean, I've had guys tell me all the
Yeah.
time, like, dude, she was reading her horoscope, or like she was
Mhm.
watching like this astrology video, and it's been demeaned into this like woo-woo thing, like
Yeah.
fantasy, childlike thing,
Because
when
it's
really
feminine.
because it's feminine and it's a science. And I didn't understand that until I got my chart read, and this lady, this like 100-year-old French lady, is measuring everything to the T and
Mhm.
could tell me, because I realized it's a complete science. Like even from
It
a
is.
masculine point of view, your physics, everything is energy. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
if the planets are aligned in a certain way when you are born, that's going to affect you as a piece of
Yeah.
matter that you are.
Yes.
And so
Mhm.
when I discovered that it was a science and gave it the respect, and also just like was able to discern what was kind of exploiting it, and because
Mhm.
everything, even the feminine, gets exploited,
Yeah.
right, and distorted. But when I was actually able to say, oh my gosh, this is a science, I realized how much, because it's feminine and of feminine origin, it's put down. Because even culture, like ancient cultures like the Mayans and Egyptians,
Yeah.
Yes.
all measured the stars, and that was a legitimate, their calendar is better than ours.
It's based, yep. And it's based
So,
on the moon and the stars. Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
and just look at their architecture, look at all of their civilizations, even the things like so much of that has been destroyed, but their knowledge was like we look at them because they're ancient, we look at them as sometimes being more primitive, but the fact of the matter is that we've actually regressed
I agree.
spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. Our intellect is really nothing compared to the intellect that they had, because they were much more connected to source, and they had they lived more in balance because they were in more reverence of the creator versus exploiting and trying to dominate creation, because they're, you know, their insecurity of not being that thing.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, when you look at all of the things that have overtaken this planet, mass death, famine, scarcity, murder, rape, overextension of agriculture, which is a big contributor to the destruction of the planet.
Mhm.
All of those things are directly related to patriarchal oppression of women, because to exploit, destroy, and rape women is to do it to the planet, because we're that's why they call it Mother Earth. So everything that's done to the planet is done to women, and vice versa. So if you're exploiting and destroying women, then the planet is also going to be destroyed and exploited, because that destruction of the woman is really rooted in a hatred of the divine feminine. And that's why the world is so chaotic. Like, a lot of people don't even know that the Middle East, the Sahara, that entire block of like North Africa and the Middle East that's covered in desert, that used to be lush. It used to be covered in rainforest and water.
I heard that.
You know, and it's only been desert for probably like 4,000 or 5,000 years.
Wow.
And those were things that were born, like this, even just the idea of scarcity did not exist prior to the institution of patriarchal oppression.
And a lot of it is based in fear. I think that's why I've learned to
Yes.
have so much compassion for men, because it's scary. You know, they're not used to it. We've all been raised to put women down. So when there's these women are rising, it can seem like it's to extract their power.
Yeah.
When it's to empower them, but it can be really, really scary. And I think that's why I've learned to have compassion for it as well.
Yes.
You know?
The
last book.
This one
the
is
last book,
super important. Sylvia Federici, because you read this book, right?
Yeah.
I let you borrow this.
Changed my life.
I think I saw it on your Instagram and you posted something about it. Yeah, that one caught my eye.
This book like ripped my brain apart into a million pieces and then put it back together again. This isn't like, it's not like the other two. This is basically like a book about history and economics. And what it does is, let me see if I can just read like a little.
Yeah, like a little preface or something.
It's so hard to explain, like, you know, because you've read it.
It's hard. Yeah.
Repeat the name again. I think it got cut off. The name is what?
Caliban and the Witch by Sylvia Federici.
Okay.
So this book, so Caliban and the Witch is a history of the body and the transition to capitalism, moving from the peasant revolts of the late Middle Ages to the witch hunts and the rise of mechanical philosophy. Federici investigates the capitalist rationalization of social reproduction. She shows how the battle against the rebel body and the conflict between body and mind are essential conditions for the development of labor power and self-ownership, two central principles of modern social organization. And when I first read this, I was like, this was just like a bunch of word salad to me. And I'm very fucking smart. And I was just like, what are you talking about? And when I read this book, I had to have my phone near me with the dictionary.com, because I had to Google so many words, because it uses a lot of economic jargon. But basically it goes through like a 700 or 800 year history, beginning with the removal of people from the land, because, you know, people used to just live freely on the land and they would forage and hunt and gather their own things, and how all of that was taken away from the population, or the proletariat, which is the economic term for the worker, and how they were continually herded into enclosures, which is what we now call cities and towns. And the main mechanism for them doing that was completely destroying women's bodies, minds, and souls through the witch hunts, and it was all facilitated through religion. And so whereas before you had women that had a deep connection to the earth, herbalism, natural healing,
you
sacred
had women
rituals.
Who were lawyers. You had women who lived on their own.
Women used to own businesses.
Yeah.
Like, people don't know, like, beer, like, all of agriculture is a female invention. Like, women invented beer. Like, 700 years ago, all beer taverns were owned by women and operated by women, because women were the only ones that knew how to do these things. So all of the industries that have been co-opted by men were originally creations of women, like midwifery, which has been completely destroyed over the last 100 years. You know, it's another thing that was taken away from women. But the witch trials were the main mechanism to basically domesticate and subdue women into submission. And over the course of about 200 years, millions, I think it was like 2 or 3 million women were burned at the stake. And it was a systemic practice done to basically take power away from women and to scare them into sociopolitical submission.
Yeah. It's, if you want to learn about female power, study witch hunts, study the witch trials, study the women that were burned at the stake, because you see how much it took to really put us in that state of
control them.
It was a massive, massive concerted effort. So everything that you see going on with women today, you know, that, I mean, the beginning of patriarchy, of course, led to that. But what we now know as capitalism could not have been done had they not completely destroyed and domesticated women. Because again, we are the creators. And if you control the body of the woman, you control the entire society. And that's why women's rights are so important, and why there's always so much emphasis on things like abortion rights and birth control and all of those things, because it's through us that the workers, which are basically the slaves, are created. It's through the bodies of women. So this book, it's a very different tone. It's very hard to read. She does not pull any punches in terms of the horrific things that were done to women, but it will completely change the way you look at the world if you read that book. So I recommend that to young women.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Awesome.
Now I want to switch gears just a little bit, because I do want, you are on a TV show.
Oh yes.
We have to hello, you're on a Stars television show, Run the World.
I forgot.
Characters. You forgot. It's a Saturday. It's actually yours on Saturday.
Side note.
Side note. It's on Amazon Prime. If you don't have Stars, the channel, everybody has Amazon Prime. Thank you, Jeff Bezos. So you have no excuse not to watch it, and it's amazing.
Thank you.
Did self-love get you there? I guess that's a silly question to ask. Yeah. What got you that part?
Yes, self-love for sure. So many things happened. I got into, you know, I have to rewind back a couple of years, because I was in a relationship with Mr. Peanut, and a lot of my programs were coming to a head. I was having a lot of conflict in my life with friends and family, and of course with Mr. Peanut. And I knew that there were a lot of healing breakthroughs that needed to happen. And so I got into a version of therapy or life class. I don't want to say the person's name, but you know what I'm talking about. It's because we were in that class together, and it was wonderful. And I got so many amazing things out of it, but I just no longer study with this person. And so I got into doing a lot of self-healing, and also getting guided through life coaching to heal my programs and just take personal responsibility for my life and the life that I'm creating. And that was what I didn't understand at the time, was those lessons were sort of the embodiment of self-love. Because when you recognize yourself as the creator of your existence, and you take responsibility for every single thing that you're experiencing, the more you love yourself, the more that you're able to create things that are the representation of that love. Does that make any sense? And so a big thing that started happening was I kept getting messages from the goddess that I needed to leave my relationship. As much as I loved him so much, and it was very, very, very difficult to end that relationship. And ultimately, because of my fear of letting go someone that I thought was just this incredible, and he was an incredible person, but there was a part of me that was afraid that I would never find another person as good or better than he was. And I ultimately, what ended up happening was he broke up with me. He broke up with me. We got into a fight. He broke up with me. And so it was the universe forced. It took the choice away from me.
Yeah.
So that put me on a path where once he broke up with me, I had to just face myself, and I had to start walking this road alone. And there was a month-long period where I just dove into these really intense self-love practices, lots of meditation, a whole lot of crying, spiritual baths, cord cutting ceremonies, all of these things. And then he came back into my life maybe a month or so later, and we reconnected. But then I had this whole clear vision from just that little bit of time that I had alone. And I got to really see him for who he was. And I realized, as great as he is, I can do better. I can do better.
That.
And he wasn't on the same path of growth that I was on. And so I ultimately ended the relationship and really just committed to my solitude, which is really what the universe was telling me that I needed. Was I needed to be alone. I needed to sit with myself. I needed to do a lot of deep healing. I needed to be celibate. I needed to just keep going inward as much as I could. And so throughout that process, I just became, more at peace with myself. I was taking more responsibility for the life that I was creating. I stopped blaming him for the things that had gone wrong in the relationship. I stopped blaming my mother. I stopped blaming friends. I stopped blaming my ex-husband for things. And I just realized, wow, this is the life that I had so that I could have this experience, so that I could start growing into this person. And then from there, I started learning to just open up my heart, my chakras, especially my heart chakra, which I didn't realize had been closed. And so the way, to answer the question of like manifesting this job, by healing myself, by opening my heart, by stepping into my solitude, by recognizing myself as a divine creator, and also as someone who is on this path of empowering other women through empowering myself, I was able to, I got this opportunity to audition for this incredible show about beautiful, independent, successful women who are living beautiful lives. And of course, they have problems and issues and like, conflict with love interests, as my character does. But it was just this really beautiful opportunity that came into fruition because of my willingness to just commit to myself and let everything go and trust that I needed to be on my own, that the perfect job was going to come when it was supposed to. I didn't work as an actor for like 2 years almost. I think I did a couple of commercials and one guest star role, which, for some people is a lot, but for someone who had been working consistently, it was like a big nosedive. And so I just fell into this state of trust of, you know what, it's going to happen. And then one day I got this audition, and when I read the breakdown, I knew it was mine. I knew it was mine without a shadow of doubt, but I also knew that I needed to put in the work to make it happen. And I had to like really prepare the character and get coaching. That's the masculine coming through action. And, I went and auditioned for it. And then I got a chemistry read. And then I did this really beautiful ritual, like this it's like a meditative, it was like a meditative masturbation ritual where I visualized myself, like at the point of climax, I visualized myself getting the call that I booked the show. And right at the point of climax, I felt all of the emotions, like the elation, the joy, the ecstasy of that experience. And then I think a couple days later, I got the phone call that I had gotten the job. And it's not to say that my sex magic worked.
Well, it made it more enjoyable.
It definitely made it
way more enjoyable.
But it was just a beautiful way of like even loving on myself into experiencing the pleasure of receiving something like that was something that I didn't even know that I could do until I was able to step away and heal myself and deepen my self-love, because healing is a form of self-love, because it's sweeping away all of the things that don't belong to you so that you can step into your full purpose and potential. And I feel like for the first time in my life that I'm really embodying that in a real way. And I think that's what people are recognizing when they talk about my glow and how beautiful I am. Like the physical is a part of it, but I really think it's because they're seeing the aura and they're seeing the peace and just the magnetism that I've been able to create for myself through just how much I love myself and know that I'm powerful and I can do anything that I put my mind to. And there's nobody on this planet that can tell me that there's something I can't do.
God, I love every single word you just said. Literally everything. And it comes from within. Like you can tell that you have this like genuine like energy inside of you. And it's that role was made for you. Like that was supposed to happen. And like you said, if you didn't take that time to heal, maybe that wouldn't have been presented. So it's just beautiful that you were able to put aside your loneliness and your pain and be like, okay, this is my time, and look at where you are now. That's beautiful. That's inspiring.
And it's for our listeners. I just think it's such a good example because self-love is and that's why I want to wrap on it, because self-love is such a concept. But when you actually see, and not that people should be pursuing this because they're going to get on a show or they're going to get a career. It's because when you love yourself, it's almost like nothing else matters as much.
Yeah.
So you're able to attain these things that you're chasing after, because really you don't need to be chasing anything. It's within you.
Yeah.
And I think that's when stuff unfolds, you know, when you're in the most true self of you and what you're made or what you're put on this earth to do. I think that things just unfold. I mean, nature is a clear example of that. Everything develops on its own time. There's no rush, there's no pressure, there's no expectation, but it's so beautiful and it exists in itself. And that's how we should be viewing ourselves, you know, like if we keep nurturing ourselves and letting things unfold on its own, then we're going to bloom one day, you know, and it hurts to bloom. I think we've mentioned that before, but there's beauty at the end of it.
There's beauty in pain too. And that's something that Abby and I have talked about a lot, is that you can really find beauty in the pain, because it's through that pain that you're being transmuted, you're being transformed and alchemized into something new. And one of the first things that I said when we were on the call when we started filming or recording, was when I talked about the divine feminine, and how part of that for me and my definition is ease. You know, life is easy. Whereas before I was always just like going up against things, but now life is so much easier because I'm just in that flow state all the time.
Right.
And it's something that if I can do it, and like, we didn't even talk about like how angry I used to be, and like again, another podcast,
another rabbit hole. Yeah.
Because if I can do it, anyone can do it. Anyone can do it.
And I've had moments where I'm crying, sobbing uncontrollably in front of Andrea for X, Y, or Z, a breakup or whatever. She's kind of smiling at me, kind of laughing and giggling. And I'm like, why? Because she's like, it's so beautiful to see you in pain, because we're coming after this wave. It's just going to transform you. It's transform you. I see it. I see it within your pain. And I think for those, you know,
it's birth.
It's birth.
That's what birth is. Every woman that has ever birthed a child, you ask her that she felt like her body was being split in half, but the moment she looked into that baby's eyes, she would do it 1,000 times again, because of what she got on the other side of it was this beautiful creation that she made herself with her own body, her own blood, her own sweat, her own tears. And so it's the same thing. We're all experiencing birth and death constantly.
Right.
Rebirth.
So on that note,
thank you so much for everything.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
I personally feel inspired. I'm sure our viewers will feel extremely inspired. And everybody that's watching, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. This is one of many beautiful individuals that have come into our life and in our path. And we're so grateful and blessed to be sharing your knowledge and your life experience with the world. So thank you so much for opening up.
So thank you. I hope you have to. We're obviously going to have you back because there's way too many topics.
Yes.
So many topics. Thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute pleasure. It was so much fun. Thank you for listening to me ramble and talk shit and all that.
I loved it. Every minute of it.
Yay. And thank you everyone for joining. If you want to see Andrea again, please let us know. But obviously she's going to be back because you all want
coming back.
She's coming back. Thank you. Love yourself.
Love yourself.
Yes.
You're the most important thing in the universe.
Live your truth.
Take your time. We love you guys.
And the divine feminine is rising.
Hit subscribe.